Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Intruder Theatre in the Making podcast. I'm your host, Remi Rachuba, and thank you so much for tuning in. Now, just a little bit of a different intro at the beginning of the podcast from Intruder soundtrack. I just thought, why don't we spruce things up a little bit, just to give the listeners of the podcast a different flavour of the soundtrack from the piece. So coming back, as you might remember in the previous episode, I talked about community management and how working for a huge computer game helped me with my play and actually helped me understand how social media works, because by that time I had no idea what it was all about. So then, summer 2018, I went to Croatia for 2 weeks, and then after I came back, I was slowly preparing for the readings and sharings that I was going to do. And I did, in total, between September and December 2018, I did 4.5 rehearsed readings. Now, for some of you, I know that there was loads of people here that listen to the podcast and they are not theatre folk. Just a little bit of a clarification, what is a rehearsed reading? So a rehearsed reading is a chance for the piece or any kind of piece of writing to meet the audience and a way of testing it. It's a great chance for the writer to see how the piece works, maybe a chance for the director to see what works and what doesn't. And this is what we were trying to do. Now, there is two kinds of rehearsed readings. Back in the day, I'm not really sure whether people still do that, but I'm going to kind of explain the difference. Rehearsed readings, most of the time, is when actors sit at a table and read the text to the audience. I don't actually see that much happening at the moment. What I see now is more staged rehearsed readings. It's a kind of performance. So actors hold the script and they perform the piece. So it's not like it looks like a play, but it's kind of work in progress kind of thing. And this is what I've seen people do. It's not like a table read anymore where the actors just sit. I think now people just do or perform a new script and actually do things. And this is what we were interested in doing. We didn't want to have just a rehearsed reading where I would be just sitting at the table and reading the text. We really wanted to test the piece in motion, whether what worked and what didn't. And as I said, we did 4.5 rehearsed readings, and you may be wondering, Remi, why did you do so many? Initially we didn't know that we would be doing so many. We had an idea to maybe do 2, but then I think encouraged by the warm reception, we thought, okay, maybe we can do more. But there was something else going on. As you might remember, my piece is in English, it's in Polish. There was an English version, there was a Polish version. It is set in Scotland, in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and we really wanted to test the piece with various audiences. So an audience in London, and then also we wanted to test the piece with Polish audiences, but also wanted to see how it is going to work in Scotland, because subsequently we did 2 readings in Scotland. I'm going to talk about them in a couple of minutes. So September 2018, we're getting ready to do a sharing at the Dragon Cafe, me and Marcus, their director, and it was also a chance for me to see how I'm going to work with Marcus, and also for him to see what it would be like to work with me. As you might remember, we met in July of 2018, and we decided to actually see, to do a sharing and see how it's going to work, how we're going to work on the piece, because sometimes you work well and sometimes you don't work well, and I think that was the very first chance for us to meet and see what is it all about. Also, it's going to be quite important for the readings that we did in Scotland. I got in touch with a befriended producer, Polish producer in Edinburgh, Martha, who runs a silent theatre, and I asked her to help me with the readings in Scotland. So she became, she was one of our creatives that came on board. I'm not really sure whether it was September or October, but she was also part of that team at that time. So we've got that sharing at the Dragon Cafe, and I'm going to treat this sharing as a separate event, and then I'm going to talk about the readings that we did subsequently and kind of compare and maybe give some tips, advice to others who are thinking of doing rehearsed readings, and maybe say what worked for me, what didn't work for me. As I always say, I'm not an expert, but maybe I can share something with someone who is planning on doing something similar. So the sharing at the Dragon Cafe. Now, you might remember the Dragon Cafe is this kind of a community centre, a hub in the south of London for people affected by mental illness. And we didn't want to do a full reading. We only wanted to do a 15-20 minute sharing. I've been to the venue. I knew the place, what it was like. It was a very informal sharing, only for the people that attend the hub, the centre. Although two of my American friends who were visiting London at that time came to the sharing as well, Adele and Kina, and it was great to have them in the audience because I was really, really happy that all of a sudden they were there and they could see my piece and me perform a little bit. So great. But apart from that, it was very informal. So no other people attended the sharing, or industry people. We did it. It went really, really well. But one of the things that I was completely, I was really surprised by was the feedback that we received over there. I think there were 30 people in the audience, and the feedback was so warm and so generous that I never really thought that we would get anything over there. The audience understood everything that we suggested to them. Not that I was undermining, their understanding abilities. No, but what I mean by that is, the piece is bilingual. It's non-linear. It was taken out of context. I mean, the scene. So, for some people, it may not be easy to understand everything. But they completely empathized with what was going on. And it was so nice to hear. Why I appreciated that feedback, compared with the other feedback that we received, was that the feedback was given by the people that might have, or maybe some of them did, experience similar things that I experienced in the piece. So that was very, very important to me. I didn't hear stories or feedback like, oh no, I don't like the journey of that character, or what's happening, that is not working. No, the feedback was so warm, so kind. I was so grateful to everyone who came and gave us their warmth and encouragement and positivity. I was truly affected by what people had to say. It was very, very kind of them. And I think it was the most useful feedback that I received. Definitely that feedback was very, very useful for the future Arts Council England application. It wasn't the feedback that I received after all the readings. No, that feedback at the Dragon Cafe really helped me with my resubmission for Arts Council England. I will talk about it later, but my first application was unsuccessful, and then when I revisited, I included the feedback from the Dragon Cafe and quoted people, and after that, miraculously, I got the funding. But also what I think is important is to have a photographer and a person who would make a recording, a video of it, because I think it works great for the legacy of the project. Then later on, when I was filling in my Arts Council England application, I already talked about the journey of the piece and how I worked on it. So it wasn't like all of a sudden I wanted funding for the project, but the piece had a story, so that when I have my website, I can put all the photos, and whoever looks at the website from any funding body, they can see, oh, so he worked on it, they did it here, they did it there. And as I was saying, the feedback at the Dragon Cafe was, I think, the most useful out of all of them. But in hindsight, for anyone who is thinking of doing a sharing, a reading, or a scratch night, I would always consider doing it for people who identify with the piece. Not only the industry or industry professionals who could tell you about the character journey or the dramatic journey, la 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 la. No, I would always do it for people who can identify with the piece, who experience something similar, or can identify the themes in the play, or have something to do with it. I think that was very, very important to me, and it gave me a lot of satisfaction out of the feedback that I got from the people, the audiences at the Dragon Cafe. Now, I'm going now to talk about the readings that I did subsequently. So, as I said before, we had 4.5, so I treated the sharing at the Dragon Cafe as a half, and then off to the 4 rehearsed readings. So I did one in October, and that was at the King's Head Theatre, and that was a reading in English. I did one in November at the Hope Theatre in London, and I did 2 rehearsed readings in Edinburgh, and that was in December, and that was a Polish reading and an English reading. Now, when I was exploring and researching venues, I always go initially with the people or theatres that I know. So I knew the King's Head Theatre and I knew the Hope Theatre because, as you might remember, I was shortlisted for an award at the King's Head Theatre. So I thought, okay, maybe I should go to them. But there were other things that I was bearing in mind. I was thinking of the location, and that was very, very important to me. And I think it's very important for any reading or sharing that a venue is central, that it's easy to get to. It's not somewhere in the middle of nowhere, but if it's in London, I would always make sure that, you know, it's somewhere everyone can have access to, and not everyone can travel very, very far, especially remembering that probably people who are going to come to your reading, whether it's industry or not, well, they would be coming maybe towards the end of the working day, rather than, you know, going somewhere and then coming back home at midnight. So this is what I was bearing in mind, the location. But also I was looking at, you know, what else is at the venue, and the King's Head Theatre and the Hope Theatre are pub theatres, and I think it's that social aspect is the most important after the rehearsed reading, because it's great to do the reading and then meet the audiences, meet the people, have a drink. That's what I had after the reading at the King's Head Theatre, where my family came, my friends came, there were some industry people, and we could just chat and talk, and it was brilliant. The same thing was with the Hope Theatre. Wasn't well attended, but I chatted to a couple of people, and I think that aspect is very, very important for any rehearsed reading. There's kind of a chance to meet, to talk, to mingle. I think it's great. So that was for the King's Head Theatre and the Hope Theatre. With the readings in Edinburgh, that was a little bit different. So the reading in Edinburgh was done at the North Edinburgh Arts, a venue that I had never heard about. It was a venue that was recommended to me. Martha of the Silent Theatre suggested that venue. I think she had she knew some people over there, but also what we were thinking was that we knew that the venue was, Polish communities lived close to that venue, and because we were doing that reading in Polish, we were thinking, okay, maybe some Polish people can come to that reading, so we can offer it to them as well, and it's going to be easier for them to get to the venue. So that was the thinking behind that venue. But what happened was, and I really should have done more research on it, to be quite honest, North Edinburgh Arts is on the outskirts, and what happened was it was a venue that was not easy to find, and audiences that lived in Edinburgh or even in Glasgow, because there were people that came from Glasgow, my friends, they couldn't find the venue, so even industry people couldn't find it. So that was one thing, and they came late. But also what happened was, and I wasn't aware of that, it only dawned on me when I was there, was the fact that there was nowhere to sit. I mean, there were some benches, but there was no like a bar or a social area where people could have a drink or tea or coffee. There was a little bit of a kitchenette, but it was closed. And then it was December, it was Friday evening, it was cold, it was raining, and then people came, they didn't have a place to sit. And then after the reading, people were asking me, Remi, where can we have a drink? Is there somewhere we can sit and have a warm drink or tea? And there wasn't. And then literally people came to the reading and then they left the venue, and I never saw them. And I actually felt bad after the reading, because I thought, wow, people made an effort to come here and I didn't have a lot of time to talk to them. So for anyone who is doing a sharing or a reading, I would always bear in mind that, maybe if I were to choose, I would always go for a venue that has some kind of a pub or a place where you can get a drink, because it's great to just to talk to people about it. And even at the reading at the King's Head Theatre, there was a journalist that we invited, and we had a conversation about the piece, and they were from United Solo Festival. That's a festival for solo pieces ran by Omar Sangara in New York, and they were very, very kind to interview me and then put the interview on the website. So social aspect, very, very important. Another thing that kind of became apparent when we were doing all the readings was the fact that we were testing venues in terms of what space the piece would work best, because I didn't even know that I would be looking at something like that. We would be doing sharing at the Dragon Cafe, and it was very small venue, very intimate. And then at the Kingset Theatre, it was similar, which I already liked. The Hope Theatre was for me too small. It seemed claustrophobic, to be quite honest. And the North Edinburgh Arts was just too big. Lovely, amazing venue, very modern, but was too huge. The stage was great. The stage was very, very big. I absolutely loved it, but I felt it didn't work for the piece. So I think even if you do a reading or a sharing in various locations or various venues, you are always testing the venues, seeing, okay, does my piece work here? Is it the best venue for my piece? It was something that I never thought about, but it kind of dawned on me when I was doing the readings that I felt comfortable in this space, or I wasn't comfortable in that space. I think that's always worth bearing in mind, that, you know, testing venues, and I now know that Intruder works best in a very small, intimate venue. Contact with the venues. So with the Kingset Theatre, we were doing the reading in October. I had been getting in touch with them in July. Now, contacting them was a nightmare. I would email them, I wouldn't get a reply, I would email again, I wouldn't get a reply, I would email them again, and then after 2 weeks I got a reply, and then I emailed immediately and I didn't get a reply for another 2 weeks. So it was like that. Near October, it was very, very delayed. I remember I was on holiday in Croatia and sending these nudging emails. Hello, can you reply to my email? It wasn't very, very nice. Initially, I think it was normal, but then when I started getting in touch with other venues, I noticed that no, it's not usual. This is not any kind of criticism of the venue, because it's now 3 years after, so it's maybe there might be a different team working, but it definitely wasn't very helpful. The other thing was, you check everything, but I believed that people would be quite straightforward, and I was looking into booking the venue and the space, and normally it's before 7:30 because they had some performances and opera, I think La Traviata, at 7:30, so the time we had, I think it was 5:30. And I was really thinking, well, we're going to have the space and it's going to be great, only to find out when we got into the space and we finally met someone from the theatre that there was a pole in the middle of the stage, because of course they were using it for the opera. I was not aware of that. We didn't know anything about it. Initially, when we came into the space, we were like, what the fuck? But then we worked around it, and actually when you go to Instagram and Intruder Play, I think there was a photo from the Kingset Theatre and that pole, and you could see what it looked like. I didn't have anything else to do with the Kingset Theatre. That was it. With the Hope Theatre, it was very small space. They were really hands-on. It was very quick, and it was quite straightforward. One of the things that really crossed my mind was when we were doing the reading at the Hope Theatre, and I know it's a different team now. It's a new writing theatre, and I would think if it's a new writing theatre, there would be someone from the team who would come and see your piece, although you invite them. But then there was nobody, and then you start thinking, well, what kind of a new writing venue is it if they don't come and see new writing? It was just something that just crossed my mind, and we knew that the team was available because we saw them downstairs. There was just something interesting about that. With the North Edinburgh Arts, I didn't have anything to do with them, but they were the loveliest people that I met. Some of them came to the reading, which was great. So very nice experience, and I would always recommend North Edinburgh Arts, but as I said, it's a little bit outside of the city centre. Industry professionals. Now, you might be thinking, should I be inviting industry to the reading? I would always say yes, do that. You may be saying, oh, it's just a reading, it's just a sharing. I mean, why? I think it's important to let people know what you're doing, and people can remember. They don't have to respond, but they can see that you're doing something. For each of the rehearsed readings, I invited the people that I knew. I let them know about it. I sent an invite about 3 weeks prior to the rehearsed reading. You don't get a reply. Maybe you would get 1 reply, 2 replies out of 500. It would be an automatic reply that this email doesn't exist anymore. But I think it's important for people to know that you're doing something. So as you can imagine, there were loads of emails that I had to send. So apart from preparing for the readings, contacting venues, rehearsing, memorizing the script, I was also approaching industry professionals and telling them about the reading. Now, as I said, I did it 3 weeks before the reading, and then a week before the reading I also sent a gentle reminder. I had a really standard email. I just changed the name of that person, so Dear Mary, Dear John, Dear, and because if I had to write separate email to everyone, I would be still writing it after 3 years after the reading. But it was very straightforward. I have all the contact details for casting directors in my inbox, so it was quite straightforward. And the gentle reminder was also sent on a similar basis. So then when I did the reading at the Hope Theatre, I repeated the process, and I repeated the process for the reading in Edinburgh, especially as that was in Scotland. So I thought, well, maybe someone would come, and they actually did. I had a couple of people that came to the reading at the King's Head Theatre. There were some artistic directors, there was a BBC development producer, I had the literary manager from the National Theatre of Scotland who came. So there were some people that came to the reading, which was great. I think it's wonderful to have these people and to see, it's great for them to see your work. But you may be discouraged by the fact that, nobody replies. I know, everyone goes through the same process, and I am not an exception. You kind of feel like, oh God, will anyone come? But they do read the emails, because I do get these messages. But what even happened after the readings, that was in January, I got an invitation to audition at the Globe. And when I got to the audition, I was speaking to lovely Becky, and I said, Becky, how did you find out about me? I never even contacted you. And then she said to me, no, you were sending emails to the main casting director at the Globe, and she forwarded me your email, and this is how I knew that, you exist. Which was great. And then you kind of think, wow, well, it's worth, sending all these emails, because an audition at the Globe doesn't come like that. I don't have an agent, so it's not quite straightforward for me. But then you think, wow, it's wonderful that people read, and then when a perfect opportunity arises, they can invite you to something that you're suitable for. So I would always say, email people and tell them about your sharing, reading, or whatever you do. Well, with moderation. Don't be too desperate. Now, how did I promote my play? The readings. So as you know, I had been working for the computer game company, and the insight into social media helped me with the readings, especially working on Facebook and Twitter. I noticed that definitely these two platforms are very, very useful. When I was thinking of promoting the readings, and just now even, I always go to the people that I know, or institutions, schools, organizations that for example, where I trained or I did some kind of a course or workshop, because they know you and they're going to support you. So I would always go to the people that I know and that know you, and I always ask them for help, for a retweet of something. I noticed that Twitter is the most useful tool to share some news about any kind of an event. Facebook, you share it with friends, you can organize an event, but I think with Twitter, when people retweet, I think that it's very, very powerful. So I would always focus on Twitter if I were to share some news about something, even when I do when we finally do the production of Intruder, hopefully in 2021 or 2022, I would be definitely putting info about it on Twitter and asking people to retweet it. Now, that's an interesting thing that I wanted to point out. I would be always thinking that it should be straightforward. People just retweet your tweet, but it's not like that. Well, maybe it's 5% where people retweet, but most of the time you actually need to, this is what I needed to do, ask for a retweet of a tweet. I would be thinking that people just retweeting, but no, it doesn't work like that. I actually had to find a person at the digital team of a theatre or institution, and then ask them to retweet info about my reading. That is very, very interesting. I still can't comprehend. I don't know whether people are busy or whether it works like that, but it's something that is still bewildering to me, and I don't know, maybe someone could explain that to me, but I still can't understand why is it that people are not that easily retweeting info about something. Someone could say, it's not something that we are part of, but we are all in the art industry, right? But I just wanted to come back to something that I touched upon in the previous episode. I talked about, getting paid and getting money for the rehearsed readings. And, how I paid Marcus, for example, because I really didn't want to just ask him to do work on it without paying him. So what I decided to do, I knew that the readings were coming, and I thought maybe I can approach some companies to get some money from them, and I can pay the creatives, or I can pay for the flights to Edinburgh. So what I did was, and that was mainly with the Polish readings, I got hold of a couple of Polish magazines, and I looked at various companies that advertise over there. And then there was some contact information, and I contacted the companies, and I told them, and I asked them, I saw you advertising, but maybe I could offer you something else. I could offer you some kind of a deal that, if you help us, I can promote your activities on the poster, especially as these readings are coming. And actually, I got a couple of companies, one in London and two in Poland, that agreed to that. That was Aneta Maziar's Solicitors, a company in London and 2 Polish companies, Piekarnia Nowakowski Nowo and Asia Basia in Kudowa-Zdrój, my hometown. And what I did was I said, if you can help us, in return I can put the logo of your company on my poster so that people can see that. And also I was speaking with a couple of Polish newspapers and magazines and online portals, so I always ask them to include that poster on their website, and they agreed to that, and that was great. And I'm very, very grateful that they helped my piece, and they are still part of it. I always said that it's not a one-off thing. I would be very, very grateful, because if it hadn't been for them, I wouldn't be where I am at the moment. And I'm very, very grateful for their contribution and they trust in me as an artist. So for that amount of money that they gave me, I did promotional activities, and I still do, because even recently I created a post where I thanked them, and one of the posts reached about 7,000 people. So it is an ongoing thing, and I am very, very grateful for their contribution. And the money that we received helped us with venue costs, because we needed to pay for the venue at the King's Head Theatre. I paid Marcus for his time, and I also paid for plane tickets for me and Marcus to go to Edinburgh. So actually, to be quite honest, after the rehearsed readings, I didn't have to pay anything out of my own pocket, because I had the money from the sponsors, which was great. Now, as far as feedback is concerned, I touched upon it slightly when I talked about the Dragon Cafe, that, the feedback was amazing because it was given by people who went through something similar. I always think it's great to have, some questions prepared for the audience after the reading, so that, or they can give you some feedback. Of course, at the reading at the King's Head Theatre, when you have family and friends, you need to look at the feedback, differently, because your mum is always going to tell you that this is the best play you've ever written. But we didn't get we got some feedback from the reading at the King's Head Theatre, not much after the Hope Theatre reading, but we got a lot of feedback from the readings in Edinburgh. As I was saying, in Edinburgh we had 2 readings, Polish and English. We didn't get much feedback from the Polish reading, but we got a lot of feedback from the English reading, especially as there were audiences from Glasgow and Edinburgh, and I think Martha invited quite a lot of industry to the reading. Now, it's very, very interesting, because when you get too much feedback, you don't know where to start, but when you see something similar, okay, we need to look at that when we rehearse. It would be good to focus on something, and that was very, very helpful. So I would always have some kind of a feedback form or questions, or if you're testing a particular fragment of the reading, I would ask questions about it, so that it's easier for you to understand what people think and where they're coming from. You would get various feedback. Some of the feedback you would think, what is that? I have no idea what it is. It's complicated, it's overthought, but it's great to get that feedback, and I would always encourage anyone to have some kind of a form handy to tell people and ask them what they thought of what you did. Final things about rehearsed readings: I would always make sure that I have a photographer there, or someone who is recording it. Luckily, we had lovely Josh and Ailey, and Josh was recording the sharing and the reading at the Dragon Cafe and the Kingset Theatre, and Ailey was taking photos. With the Hope Theatre, we didn't have anyone, and then at North Edinburgh Arts, we had a very good photographer. Now, in hindsight, I probably would have asked someone else to come to the reading at the Hope Theatre, because sometimes you ask people for help, and people say, yes, I'm going to do that, it's great, I can take photos, and then you look at the photos and they're out of focus, and then they're not good. So we do have photos, and you can see them on Facebook, Instagram at Intruder Apply. I'm kind of updating the photos from various readings so you can see what they were like. As I said, some are better, some are worse, but I think it's always good to have it all documented, even as I said before, for the legacy of the project. And then sometimes even people ask you, do you have a recording of it? I want to see what it's like. So Josh, helped us with it. And I think I paid him for the work, for that, and we have a lovely edited version of the readings. But even what's useful is that the fact that when it's recorded, then you can use some video clips for social media and put stuff there for people to see. I think it's always great, and that's a great tool for engaging others. And the final thing to remember for any reading, any sharing, is just to enjoy it. I had a great time doing them all. Although it wasn't just performing, I was producing all the rehearsed readings and promoting them and getting money and getting all the sponsors, which I didn't know at the time that this is what producers do. I thought everyone goes through the same process. But the major thing is to enjoy it and to have fun, and I surely had a lot of fun when I did the readings, because I love the piece. I read it now and it always makes me laugh. Definitely doing it at the Kingset Theatre for friends and family, at the Hope Theatre, and then North Edinburgh Arts when we did 2 consecutive readings. Actually, it's very, very interesting, because with Edinburgh I was thinking, oh God, will I be able to do 2 readings? It's very physical, it's very demanding. Will I be, should I save my energy for the second reading? But what happened was, which I never saw that coming, I was so excited to present it that after the second reading, I think my adrenaline was at level 1000, because I said I could do 1 more reading, if not 2, which after the previous readings, I could not say. I went to bed very late in Edinburgh. I couldn't fall asleep. It was just buzzing in me. And I think it's always very important that as actors, as writers, as directors, the most important thing is just to enjoy it and to have fun. And the rehearsed readings provided me with that opportunity to just let go, to just do whatever I wanted to do. With Edinburgh, what's interesting that Marcus couldn't come because of personal reasons. But then by this time I had done 2.5 rehearsed readings, and I kind of knew what to do. I was confident that what I was doing was right, and I really didn't need loads of guidance of where to go, where to look. It was just kind of little tweaks here and there, because of course it was a different venue, and that was very liberating, to be quite honest. So that'll be it about the 4.5 rehearsed readings, which happened towards the end of 2018, and then we were gearing up for 2019, still thinking that we are going for Fringe 2019. after the rehearsed readings, it was quite straightforward that here we go. Finally, we're going to present Intruder to the world. But there was one thing that happened just at the very beginning of 2019 that once again proved me wrong, and I needed to focus on something completely different. But what it was, that's what you're going to get in the next episode of Intruder, Theatre in the Making podcast. For those of you who enjoyed it, this episode, and you want to help me with the podcast financially, you can become my sponsor for less than a coffee, that is £1, and become the patron of the podcast. The details will be in the description of this episode, or you can go to my website remirachuba.com. It says Patreon, and you can become the patron of the podcast, and I'll be very, very grateful for that. So until then, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye for now.